maybe only 1 or 2% of garments can be recycled, and the rest, the 98%, has to be sent to be burned because there are too many blended materials inside it. Last year in October, in our textile show in Taipei, one company announced the technology. They can be solving all of this garment collection and recycle problems by a chemical process. No matter it is CVC or it's NT or it's nylon blended with polyester, it can be done and recycled. But why it was not yet promoted very well? Because we are lacking of government involving. Because there is a necessity that government shall set up a law to regulate how to use recycle, how to collect those wasted garments. And this technology, based on my understanding, the company Far East New Centuries, they are responsible for it, and they are all going to promote into internationals. So if everybody in this room, you are interested, please contact Taiwan Textile Federation. They are willing to give the licensing of this technology to different countries. So I think that will be the key to solve all the waste around the world. 98% of the garment cannot be recycled for the time being. But once the technology is adopted very wide in the world, it will be a success for the world, for the earth.
Yeah. Yes, I just add that in Europe there are some companies already doing the closed loop, but it's still based on the cotton, 100% cotton. There's a company in Spain called Recover that actually is working with us on a big project to collect all the cutting scrap, 100% cotton. They transform it into yarn without any dyeing, so it's, I don't know if you know the company, they transform it into yarn and bring it back to the market. You can do a full closed loop with the same client, trash from one client, bring it back to new product, new life, in the same brand. The thing is, the worst part of it is that anything that is a blend, anything that has a different composition cannot be done yet. So yes, there is a lot of opportunities on the technological side to develop new ways of looking into it, and we need to do it fast because we know the population is growing at a rate that is kind of scary, and one day we will not have land, and the land is going to be for food because that's our primary need, and we need to come up with ideas to have fibers that are recycled from the clothes that we are nowadays throwing at the landfill.
Yeah, so I think, this all boils down to, the consumer, and how important do you think it is that we, bring about this awareness? I think this is, do you have any suggestions on, how do we get this movement going? Because really, it's like we talked about earlier with the price points. People want cheap, people want fast fashion, but we need to make people aware of what they're purchasing. Would anyone like to touch on that?
Well, I would suggest fast fashion is a very good business tool for developing the business. Why not a slow fashion? If it is a little bit more expensive, but you can wear on it for 10 or 15 years. And that will help the earth get the waste decreased.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there is a big work that can be done from the industry also to educate brands in the way of incorporating recycled and waste into their designing process. We talked a lot about education, for example, on design. We all know that's like a primary need. We need to educate our designers to look at what's out there that we can already use, instead of like, I'm going to be Einstein and invent something new. Everything is invented. We need to look at what we have and bring it back to the market, but incorporate it from the beginning of the process, and that's kind of hard. It needs to start in universities.
Yes, education.
I think from my side, because I work in supply chain on the packaging side, it's very open source. It's not as protected information to share your resources. When you're talking about who you're buying compostable plastics from or recycled plastics, if you buy recycled plastics also, everyone shares information. And we have one, if I can share an anecdote, we have one client on the contemporary side who it's Reformation. They have a really strong brand identity. They're built on sustainability. And they have a really strong Instagram Instagram account as well. Their Instagram account is generally really, really beautiful girls on vacation wearing sundresses. It's like pretty much their entire feed. One day, a few months ago, they published a picture of our bags that we make for them, which are message branded. They talk about what the contents are, how to compost the bag, the closed loop message. The engagement on this one post from all of their clients about how amazing it was that they were using compostable packaging. Where could they get it from? What company was making it? What is the process? It was such an opportunity for that, and it performed amazingly, which is, when your feed is just pretty pictures of girls on vacation in, Sardinia, it's like very surprising when packaging can perform that well. When we talk about things, when we educate people, when we have open conversations in our industry about how to improve things, this is ultimately how the most information and the most education happens, is really just talking to each other.
Yeah, I agree, but I have to disagree that that brands they are not ready yet to disclose completely their supply chains, and we all know that. Even if they say they are, there are so many great platforms. I would talk about SourceMap, for example, which is doing an incredible job. But it's also down to the brand to be open to disclosure completely their supply chain, and that's really, like, I would say that Patagonia was maybe the first one, and maybe you can count on your hand how many brands are completely transparent in their factories and suppliers.
Thank you. So how imperative do you all think it is for brands to make immediate material improvements to their brand supply chain?
I mean, do it right now, if you can. It's really pressing. We're approaching a waste crisis. Speaking purely from the packaging side, which I know is very different from manufacturing, we're approaching a really critical waste crisis across the world. This is not specific to the US. This is going to become a more and more important topic with all of your customers, with your manufacturers, with the press. Indeed, how your brand is communicated to the world. It becomes more and more pressing every day. And as we contribute, yesterday we had just the sourcing part of the show was open, so everything else was closed. And there were quite a lot of people that were walking the show that were telling me about the brands that they were about to launch, and they were like, "Well, we're still so small, and I don't know if we can get into sustainability yet." And honestly, you shouldn't bother launching a brand right now unless you're planning on being sustainable. It's not a questionable business practice. If you're not planning on sustainable business practices, don't bother getting off the ground. Save the money on the B Corp. Just don't do it. It's imperative.
I think it's almost too late, and I'm sorry to say that I'm maybe the only European here, but I think the US is so behind. I'm really, really sorry to say that. But in Europe, it's really developed. Sustainability, it's almost like a word that nobody wants to talk anymore, to be honest. This is something that is really coming from the inside of the companies. They need to believe on what they are doing in sustainability and in other areas. So I agree with you. I think the moment is now, and there is so much talk because it looks great to talk about this. There is too much talk, to be honest, and this is the moment to act. Let's all do something in our own little thing, because we also have to overcome the idea that, oh, it's only me. There was this factory in Bangladesh that killed thousands of people. What can I do to help? Yeah, you can do something to help. It's not that you have to be an activist. I'm not an activist, for sure. You don't have to go to the streets and fight for that. But if we all do our little piece of responsibility, then we can all impact on the people's lives too. Yeah.
Very good point, yes.
Well, it's very important for retailers and brands to understand the importance. So as I understanding, as I said at the beginning, the Sustainable and Labor Convergence Project developed by OECD has already started with the international brands as well as their supply chain around the world. And there is another example I can share with you, is the ZDHC, the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals. It was led by two leading brands, Nike and Adidas. 2016 January, the two companies sitting in our office talk about how to develop it to give the world zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. And then another 22 brands around the world joined it. So far as I understand, by the end of 2022, the solutions for zero discharge will be developed and promoted to the world. And there are more examples like a circular economy by different countries or regions. So I think brands and retailers around the world, they have already understand the importance, they have already taken actions, and we just need to follow and cooperate with them.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the panel have anything to add before we open it up to the audience for questions? Okay, well, thank you. And do we have any questions?
How you doing? I own a company right now that we do everything completely sustainable, but we recycle fish from waste and we turn it into high-end leather. But for every single obstacle that we do to keep it as clean and sustainable as possible, the price just keeps hiking up, and we have to then turn around and charge the customer even more money for that. And we've been trying to figure out how to not only stay sustainable, but actually give a price to the clients that we can actually sell our products to. You know, I don't mind making 100 bags that cost a large amount of money, but I want to get the product out there with still being able to use sustainable means to it, but keep the price point low. That's been the hardest part. How do we get past that obstacle?
I remember 20 years ago, we have the same pen in the neck as you did. But when we successfully convinced the clients, those are leading names around the world, because they are entitled to give value-added products to their clients and consumers. Once the material is with the value-added concept, this is a good strategy for the retailers and brands to promote these things to their product, to the clients, to the customers. So in the last several years, in Taiwan, those recycled polyester suppliers, they have successfully worked with the leading names around the world, and also joined this, I would say, big sports competition or games in Olympics, in FIFA World Cups, or in NBA or Major League in US. They are all adopt this kind of materials and interpret it to be products and to the clients. So I think it needs a process to tell your client what the value it is and how it will be affected to their consumers. That will be the key.
Can I just say something? I think that first the consumer must understand that they need to pay more to have a product that is absolutely traceable. That's the first thing. But the second thing is about scale. It's for us in the industry, it's all about scale, because we do beautiful products, fully sustainable. For a small brand, it's wonderful. It gives us the name, but it's lacking the scale. We need the big players to join forces so that everything can be reduced on the process, so that the product, the end product, can be sold at a reasonable price.
I just wanted to add one thing, which is that there's something that the luxury market has mastered for the entire existence of the luxury market that we really have to do in sustainability, and it's communicating the value proposition. When you see an ad for Prada or for Celine or for any other luxury brand, there's an immediate communication about what the value proposition is of that brand. This is going to make me feel luxurious, it's going to be expensive, it's made in an atelier, all of these things. It's a little, we always are a little bit shaky about communicating on the marketing side about sustainability, because there is a lot of greenwashing, and there are a lot of people coming off saying that they're doing certain things, not coming through with those values. But the marketing part is really important, and we need to figure out how to bring that communication that the luxury market has mastered so well into sustainability in a way that people will react to, so that they understand the value of what you're doing.
It's a very good point. Any other questions in the audience? Don't be shy. No questions. Anything else you folks want to talk about? Is there?
I'd love to talk about one thing, which is...
Please do. We have a couple minutes.
One of the things that we didn't really mention, and this sort of goes across all parts of our sourcing conversation, is that as these issues of human life and ethical production and sustainability become more and more imperative, there is going to be more government regulation and more reaction from the regulatory bodies that is going to sort of corral you into making these investments. And I think that it's a really great time to make a decision on whether or not you want to be at the front end of that change, or if you want to be sort of forced into those changes by government regulation. I'm not sure who here is American, but in the US this year we lost our pipeline of polyethylene recycling. We can no longer send our recycled garbage or garbage for recycling to China and Southeast Asia anymore. And as these container ships are now circling the South Pacific looking for a place to dump containers full of plastic, it is going to become a mounting crisis, and recycled plastic and virgin plastic is going to get more expensive. Similarly, as we have more, unfortunately, it seems like the only thing that it will take for people to change is to see these catastrophes happening. As we see more ethical production catastrophes going on across the world, there is going to be more regulation. Things are going to get more expensive for everyone across the board, and the bottom will come up to meet you on those costs. So it's one thing. It's one thing to make that decision now and be at the beginning of the process, and instead of being dragged along by regulatory governing bodies in whatever country it is that you're functioning.
Thank you. We have a question.
So, as a startup brand, I'm kind of just getting started in the whole manufacturing process and branding and marketing. Sustainability is one of my number one goals. Like you said, I don't even want to start unless I can do that. And so, what would maybe be like the top 3 things that you would recommend to a startup to make sure that you know what to do or how to handle, or absolutely do not miss when you're going into the process?
Is that for manufacturing or for plastic? My recommendation for young designers is look at what's out there already. Look for factories that have already their policies in place. That's kind of the first step. Don't jump into factories that are gonna make you go through the regular process. You need to find mind-alike people. So that's definitely the first part. The second thing is find a mentor. Find someone that guides you. Find someone that shows you what's the best, because there's so much out there that you really need someone to guide you on the process. For example, for my company, I speak only for my company, and for those that want, we have a showcase outside on the sustainability display. The garments out there show 3 different processes of upcycling. One on post-consumer goods, one on dead stock, and one that has a social impact, which is actually denim, which is not even our business, but we are collecting. We made a partnership with Levi's in Portugal. We are collecting all denim, sending it to Guatemala and making new beautiful garments, all handmade. Are they expensive? Yes, super expensive, but I couldn't care less, because I just want to make a point that it is possible to do beautiful products. They are out there. The client can just simplify it, take the embroideries off, make it competitive. So there are different routes you can go also, and look for the correct manufacturer that can teach you the way, basically, and show you the options that are out there already, instead of just jumping into something new and engaging in the normal and regular process of manufacturing.
Well, step 1, go find a supplier whether they have something they can certify. ERCO 100, maybe the basic. For the manufacturing process, it has the blue sign approved, or it is recycled materials that shall be approved by UN Control Union. And step 2, go to the Taiwan Pavilion, and you'll find diverse products, and they will be ready for you.
Portugal is better, I'm sorry.
Competition.
No, there's no competition. It's 2 different industries, 2 different markets.
Any other questions in the audience? Anyone? Any last pointers before we wrap this up? It's been wonderful information. I want to thank all of you, the 3 of you, for sharing with us today. I want to thank all of the audience for listening. And last chance for a question or any last comments? Okay.
Okay, Taiwan Pavilion Booth number is 96110. And this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m., we have a fashion show. It's 96014, 2 p.m. You will take a look.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know what booth number. I'm so embarrassed now.
A lot of people don't worry, Mafalda.
We are in the Portuguese pavilion.
Just look for Portugal, you'll find her.
Look for Portugal, yes.
We're actually just 2 hallways down over here. We're TIPA. It's 96413. You can see it from here.
And I guess I'll give myself that little shout out too. I'm right back here with a booth, well it's a desk, not a booth. About sources, we sell sourcing guides with fabrics, trims, finishers, production, all in North America, mostly US. We have a few Canadian textile companies listed there. I also organize smaller scale American, European fabric and trim shows in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, and Miami. We have one in 2 weeks in Chicago if anyone's from the Midwest.